It was a regular Sunday afternoon at Walker's grocery store in Atlanta when Jasmine Taylor's life changed forever. The 32-year-old physical therapist was doing her weekly shopping, pushing her cart down the cereal aisle while checking her shopping list on her phone. Her natural curls were tied up in a neat bun, and she wore her favorite comfortable yellow sundress, perfect for the warm Georgia weather. Jasmine wasn't paying much attention to her surroundings as she turned the corner into the produce section. That's when it happened. Her shopping cart bumped into something with a loud clang. Looking up quickly from her phone, she found herself staring into the warmest brown eyes she had ever seen. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," Jasmine exclaimed, realizing she had hit someone's wheelchair. The man in the wheelchair smiled, and his whole face lit up. "No worries at all," he said with a deep, friendly voice. "These grocery store corners can be tricky." He was wearing a clean white button-down shirt and dark blue jeans, and his wheelchair was a sleek black model that looked well-maintained. "I'm Jasmine," she said, extending her hand without thinking twice. "Marcus Wilson," he replied, shaking her hand firmly. "I was trying to reach those mangoes up there, but they're playing hard to get today." He pointed to the top shelf with a gentle laugh. Without hesitation, Jasmine reached up and grabbed 2 mangoes. "How many would you like?" "2 is perfect, thank you," Marcus said, placing them in the small basket on his lap. "You know, most people either avoid eye contact or go overboard trying to help. You just acted normal." Jasmine smiled. "Well, I'm a physical therapist. I work with all kinds of people every day. Everyone just needs a little help sometimes, right?" Marcus's eyes brightened. "A physical therapist? That's interesting. I'm actually a software engineer, but I work from home now. After my accident in the military 3 years ago, it just made more sense." Something about Marcus made Jasmine want to keep talking. She noticed how his eyes crinkled when he smiled, and how he used his hands expressively when he talked. Before they knew it, they had moved to the store's small cafe area. "Would you like some coffee?" Marcus asked, gesturing to the cafe counter. "I make a mean wheelchair wheelie to impress pretty ladies who crash their carts into me." He demonstrated a small wheelie, making Jasmine laugh out loud. They spent the next 2 hours talking over coffee and muffins. Jasmine learned that Marcus was 35, loved jazz music, and had been developing apps for accessibility. He told her about his time in the military and how the accident had changed his life but hadn't broken his spirit. She found herself drawn to his positive attitude and the way he could make her laugh so easily. "You know what's funny?" Marcus said as they finished their coffee. "I usually hate grocery shopping. It's always a challenge with the high shelves and narrow aisles. But today, I'm glad I came." Jasmine felt her cheeks warm up. "Me too," she admitted. "Though I should probably actually buy my groceries now. My ice cream is probably soup by now." Marcus chuckled. "Would you like to have dinner with me sometime? I know a great Italian place that's wheelchair accessible, and their pasta is amazing." Jasmine didn't have to think twice. "I'd love to," she said, pulling out her phone to exchange numbers. As they finally went their separate ways to finish their shopping, Jasmine couldn't stop smiling. She had come to the store for weekly groceries, but instead found something unexpected. Her mother always said God worked in mysterious ways, and maybe this was proof of that. What neither Jasmine nor Marcus knew at that moment was that their chance meeting in Walker's grocery store was just the beginning of an amazing journey. That random Sunday afternoon would lead to a love story that would not only change their lives, but would eventually impact their entire community in ways they could never have imagined. The first date at Luigi's Italian restaurant turned into many more. Over the next 3 months, Marcus and Jasmine spent every free moment they could together. Marcus always chose accessible places for their dates, and Jasmine discovered a whole new side of Atlanta she had never noticed before: ramps, elevators, and modified spaces that made life easier for people with disabilities. On their 5th date, Marcus took Jasmine to a jazz club where he was friends with the owner. The place had a special seating area that allowed Marcus to park his wheelchair comfortably at a table. That evening, as the smooth jazz played in the background, Jasmine watched Marcus talk about his dreams with such passion that she barely noticed his disability anymore. "I want to create apps that make life easier for people like me," Marcus explained, his eyes shining with excitement. "Imagine an app that could tell you which restaurants are truly accessible, not just claiming to be." His hands moved animatedly as he spoke, something Jasmine had come to adore about him. However, not everyone shared their happiness. One Sunday afternoon, while having lunch with her best friends Teresa and Kim at their favorite cafe, Jasmine faced her first real challenge about her relationship. "Girl, are you sure about this?" Teresa asked, stirring her iced tea. "I mean, taking care of someone in a wheelchair is a big responsibility. Think about your future." Jasmine felt her face grow hot. "I'm not taking care of him," she said firmly. "We're dating. Marcus is one of the most independent people I know. He has a successful career, his own home, and he drives his modified car." Kim jumped in. "What about children? Dancing at your wedding? All those normal things?" "Normal?" Jasmine's voice was quiet but strong. "What's normal about love? Marcus makes me laugh more than anyone I've ever met. He's brilliant, kind, and sees the world in ways that amaze me every day. That's my normal." The conversation with her friends made Jasmine think deeply about her feelings. That evening, she called her mother, Sarah, who had always been her strongest supporter. "Mama, I think I'm falling in love with him," Jasmine admitted, sitting on her apartment balcony. There was a pause before her mother spoke. "Baby, does he treat you right? Does he respect you? Make you laugh? Make you feel loved?" "Yes, to all of that," Jasmine replied, smiling as she thought about Marcus. "Then that's all that matters. Love isn't about what a person can or can't do with their body. It's about what they do with their heart." Those words stuck with Jasmine. The next day, when she met Marcus for their regular coffee date, she saw him with new eyes. She watched as he expertly maneuvered his wheelchair through the cafe, greeting the staff who now knew him by name. He had already ordered her favorite caramel latte and remembered she liked extra cinnamon on top. "You're staring," Marcus said with a grin. "Do I have coffee on my face?" Jasmine shook her head. "No, I'm just realizing something." "What's that?" "That I'm falling in love with you," she said simply. Marcus's hand froze midway to his coffee cup. For a moment, Jasmine's heart stopped, wondering if she had said too much too soon. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen. "Well, that's convenient," he said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Because I've been in love with you since you helped me reach those mangoes." That moment in the coffee shop marked a turning point in their relationship. They stopped worrying about what others thought and focused on building their life together. Marcus showed Jasmine his world, the challenges, the triumphs, and the everyday moments that made life beautiful. As spring turned to summer, their love grew stronger. They learned to navigate the physical challenges together, finding creative solutions and always maintaining their sense of humor. What others saw as limitations, they saw as opportunities to show that love knows no boundaries. Little did Jasmine know that this was just the beginning of their journey, and Marcus had plans that would change both their lives forever. After 6 months of dating, Marcus decided it was time for Jasmine to meet his family. He lived just outside Atlanta, where his parents had a beautiful one-story house with wide doorways and ramps, modifications they had made after his accident. On a warm Saturday evening, Jasmine drove them to his parents' home, her stomach full of butterflies. Marcus's mother, Linda Wilson, opened the door with a warm smile that matched her son's. She was a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. Behind her stood Marcus's father, Robert, a retired military officer with a firm handshake and a gentle voice. "So you're the famous Jasmine we've been hearing about nonstop," Linda said, pulling her into a tight hug. "Marcus calls us every day just to talk about you." "Mom," Marcus groaned, but his eyes twinkled with amusement. The dinner table was set up perfectly to accommodate Marcus's wheelchair. Jasmine noticed how everything in the house was arranged thoughtfully, not obvious at first glance, but carefully planned for accessibility. Over Linda's famous pot roast, the family shared stories and laughter. "You should have seen Marcus as a kid," Robert said, passing the mashed potatoes. "Even before the accident, he was always solving problems. At 10, he rebuilt our computer when it crashed, saved all our family photos." "Dad loves telling old stories," Marcus said, but Jasmine could see he was pleased. "Wait until you hear about my teenage punk rock phase." The evening was going perfectly until Linda asked the question many mothers wonder about. "So, Jasmine, dear, what do your parents think about your relationship?" The room grew quiet. Jasmine took a deep breath. "My mom is very supportive. My dad, he's coming around. He was worried at first, but he's starting to see Marcus for who he is, not just his wheelchair." Marcus reached for her hand under the table, giving it a gentle squeeze. This simple gesture reminded Jasmine why she had fallen in love with him. No matter what challenges they faced them together. After dinner, Marcus showed Jasmine his old room, now converted into a home office where he sometimes worked. Photos covered one wall, Marcus in his military uniform with his family, and newer ones of him and Jasmine. "Look at this one," he said, pointing to a picture of himself standing in uniform. "That was 2 weeks before the accident. Sometimes I miss standing, but then I think about how that accident led me to you." Jasmine knelt beside his wheelchair. "How do you always do that?" "Do what?" "Find the bright side of everything. Turn challenges into opportunities." Marcus smiled. "Because every challenge brought me closer to where I am now. And right now, I'm exactly where I want to be." Later that evening, as they drove home, Marcus was unusually quiet. Jasmine glanced at him, wondering if something was wrong. "Move in with me," he said suddenly. Jasmine nearly missed a stop sign. "What?" "Move in with me," he repeated. "My house is already set up for accessibility. We spend most of our time together anyway. And," he paused, "I want to wake up every morning knowing you're there." Tears filled Jasmine's eyes. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," Marcus said. "Except maybe about those mangoes at the grocery store." Over the next few weeks, they planned the move. Jasmine's apartment lease was ending anyway, and Marcus's house had plenty of space. They spent weekends organizing, rearranging furniture, and making the space theirs. Marcus showed Jasmine all the special modifications in his house: the lower countertops in the kitchen, the roll-in shower, the automated door systems. "This is your home too now," he told her as they arranged her books on his shelves. "Feel free to change anything you want." But Jasmine didn't want to change much. She loved his house just as it was, a perfect reflection of Marcus's independent spirit and thoughtful nature. As she unpacked her boxes and hung her clothes next to his, she realized they weren't just sharing a space, they were building a life together. What Jasmine didn't know was that Marcus had an even bigger surprise planned, one that would change their lives forever. Living together for 3 months had shown Marcus and Jasmine that they were ready for the next big step. Marcus spent weeks planning the perfect proposal, wanting to make it special despite his physical limitations. He chose a quiet evening at home, but what happened next surprised even him. That Friday evening, Jasmine came home from work to find their house transformed. Marcus had hired decorators to fill their living room with flowers and soft lights. As she walked in, her hands flew to her mouth in surprise. "Marcus? What's all this?" But instead of finding him waiting in his usual spot, she saw a trail of rose petals leading to their backyard. Following them, she stepped outside to find Marcus doing something she never expected. He was slowly rising from his wheelchair, supported by a special standing frame he had secretly been practicing with for months during his physical therapy sessions. "Oh my God," Jasmine whispered, tears filling her eyes. Marcus steadied himself, his arms shaking slightly with effort. "Jasmine Taylor," he said, his voice full of emotion, "I may not be able to get down on one knee, but I can stand up to ask the most important question of my life." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Will you marry me?" Jasmine rushed forward, careful not to disturb his balance. "Yes, 1,000,000 times yes." The next few months were filled with wedding planning. They decided to have a small ceremony in Jasmine's church, where she had grown up. The church already had ramps and wide aisles, making it perfect for their needs. But Marcus had another surprise in store. He was determined to dance with his bride at their wedding. Working with Jasmine's colleagues at the physical therapy center, he began intensive training with specialized equipment that would help him stand and sway for their first dance. "You don't have to do this," Jasmine told him one day after a particularly tiring therapy session. Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead. "I want to. Not because I need to prove anything, because I want to hold you close on our special day." Their families worked together to plan the perfect wedding. Linda and Sarah, Jasmine's mother, became close friends as they helped with arrangements. Even Jasmine's father, who had been hesitant at first, now treated Marcus like a son. The wedding day arrived on a beautiful spring morning. The church was decorated with white and purple flowers, Jasmine's favorite colors. Marcus waited at the altar in his wheelchair, looking handsome in a black tuxedo. When the doors opened and Jasmine appeared in her wedding dress, Marcus felt his heart stop. She was beautiful, walking down the aisle on her father's arm in a dress that seemed to float around her. Her natural curls were decorated with tiny white flowers, and her smile lit up the entire church. The ceremony was beautiful, with both families crying happy tears as they exchanged vows. But the real surprise came during the reception. When it was time for their first dance, Marcus's brothers helped him into the special standing frame hidden behind a curtain. As the opening notes of At Last by Etta James filled the room, Marcus emerged standing, supported by the frame. Jasmine's hands covered her mouth in surprise. He held out his arms to her, and she stepped into them. They couldn't move much, just a gentle sway, but it was perfect. Marcus held her close as they moved slowly to the music. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. "I love you," Jasmine whispered against his chest. "I love you more," Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for seeing me, not my wheelchair." Later that evening, as they celebrated with their loved ones, Jasmine looked around the room. She saw not just their families, but a community that had come together to support their love. Their wedding coordinator was in a wheelchair herself, someone Marcus had met through his support group. The DJ was a fellow veteran who had served with Marcus. Even their cake was made by a bakery that employed people with disabilities. What started as an accidental meeting in a grocery store had grown into something beautiful, a love that showed the world that disabilities don't define a person's capacity to love and be loved. But even as they celebrated their perfect day, Marcus was keeping an even bigger secret, one that would surprise Jasmine in ways she never imagined. The first few months of marriage brought new adventures and challenges for Marcus and Jasmine. After returning from their honeymoon in an accessible resort in Hawaii, they began settling into their new life together. Their days fell into a comfortable routine, but it wasn't always easy. One morning, about 2 months into their marriage, Jasmine woke up early to find Marcus already in the kitchen, trying to reach a coffee mug that had somehow been placed on a high shelf. Without thinking, she rushed to help him. "I can do it," Marcus said firmly, a hint of frustration in his voice. He had been using his reaching tool, and though it was taking longer, he was capable of getting the mug himself. Jasmine stepped back, remembering what they had discussed during their premarital counseling. There was a fine line between being helpful and making Marcus feel dependent. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I know you can. I just need to remember to let you." Marcus's expression softened. "Hey, come here," he said, finally grabbing the mug with his tool. "I love that you want to help, but sometimes I need to do things my way, even if it takes longer." That conversation marked an important turning point in their marriage. They began to find their balance, understanding when help was needed and when independence was more important. At work, Jasmine's experience as Marcus's wife gave her new insights into her physical therapy patients. She could better understand their frustrations and victories. One day, she came home excited about a young patient who had made progress using some of the techniques Marcus had shown her. "Remember how you taught me about transferring from the wheelchair to the car?" she told Marcus over dinner. "I used that method with Tommy today, and his mom was so happy to see him do it himself." Marcus beamed with pride. His experiences were helping others through Jasmine's work. "Maybe we should write a book," he joked. "The Wilson Guide to Wheelchair Life Hacks." Their home life had its funny moments too, like the time they decided to cook dinner together, and Marcus accidentally sprayed them both with the sink hose while washing vegetables. Instead of getting upset, they ended up having a water fight in the kitchen, laughing until their sides hurt. They'd also faced more serious challenges. Some restaurants still weren't truly accessible, despite claiming to be. Movie theaters sometimes had broken elevators, but they learned to call ahead, check reviews from other wheelchair users, and always have a backup plan. One rainy Sunday, they decided to rearrange their bedroom furniture. What should have been a simple task turned into a 3-hour project as they figured out the best layout for both their needs. They needed to ensure enough space for Marcus's wheelchair while keeping things within reach, and also making sure Jasmine had her own comfortable spaces. "This is like playing Tetris in real life." Jasmine laughed as they moved the dresser for the 4th time. "More like Wheelchair Simulator 2024, Marcus joked back. Now available on PlayStation. Their families remained supportive, though sometimes in overwhelming ways. Linda, Marcus's mom, often dropped by unannounced with food and offers to help. Sarah, Jasmine's mother called daily to check on them. Both mothers meant well, but the newlyweds had to learn to set gentle boundaries. "We love you both," Marcus told their mothers during a Sunday dinner, "but we need to figure some things out on our own." As their first wedding anniversary approached, they had grown stronger as a couple. They had learned each other's rhythms, developed their own system for handling household tasks, and most importantly, deepened their love and understanding for each other. What amazed their friends most was how they handled disagreements. Instead of fighting, they would sit together, eye to eye, with Marcus in his wheelchair and Jasmine in a chair at his level, and talk things through calmly. The secret, Jasmine told her friend Teresa, who had initially doubted their relationship, is that we're partners first. Everything else is just details we can figure out together. But even as they settled into married life, Marcus was keeping something from Jasmine. Every day while she was at work, he was making mysterious phone calls and having secret meetings. He had a plan, one that would change their lives forever, but he needed everything to be perfect before he revealed it at their upcoming anniversary dinner. 6 months into their marriage, Jasmine began noticing subtle changes in Marcus's behavior. For a man who was always open about everything, he suddenly seemed to have secrets. It started with small things that she might not have noticed if she wasn't so attuned to his daily routines. One Tuesday afternoon, Jasmine came home early from work after her last patient canceled. She'd heard Marcus talking in his home office, his voice serious and professional. "Yes, we need to finalize the paperwork by next week," he was saying. "The funding needs to be in place before." "Oh, wait." He quickly ended the call when he heard Jasmine's keys in the door. "Hey, honey, you're home early," Marcus said, wheeling out of his office with a smile that seemed a little too bright. "I was just finishing up some work calls." Jasmine noticed a stack of papers on his desk that he quickly covered with a folder. "Everything okay?" she asked carefully. "Never better," Marcus replied, but he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. The mysterious behavior continued. Marcus, who usually shared all his work projects with her, became vague about what he was doing. He started taking calls in private and asking Jasmine to run errands at specific times. One day, she found a business card for a lawyer on their kitchen counter. When she asked about it, Marcus quickly wheeled over and grabbed it. "Oh, just some legal advice for a new app I'm working on," he said, tucking the card into his shirt pocket. The joint bank account showed several large transfers to an account she didn't recognize. When Jasmine mentioned it, Marcus assured her everything was fine. "Trust me, baby," he said, taking her hand. "I'm just working on something special." Jasmine's friend Teresa had her own theories. "Girl, are you sure he's not in some kind of trouble?" she asked during their weekly lunch. Men acting strange usually means something's wrong. But Jasmine shook her head. "No, it's different. He seems excited about something, like he can barely contain himself." Even Marcus's parents were acting strange. When Jasmine called Linda to ask if she knew what was going on, her mother-in-law just laughed. "Oh, sweetie," Linda said, "you know how Marcus gets when he's focused on a project. Remember how we practiced standing for weeks before proposing?" The mystery deepened when Jasmine found Marcus on a video call with her boss from the physical therapy center one morning before work. They both went quiet when she walked in. "Good morning, Jasmine," her boss said too cheerfully. "Just consulting with Marcus about, wheelchair accessibility for the office." Later that week, Marcus asked Jasmine to work late on Thursday, saying he had some maintenance people coming to check the house. When she came home, nothing seemed different, but she noticed fresh tire tracks from multiple vehicles in their driveway. The suspicious activities reached their peak when Marcus started receiving large packages at his parents' house instead of their home. When Jasmine drove by one day, she saw Marcus's brother helping him load something into a van. "Maybe he's planning something for your anniversary," her mother suggested when Jasmine called to share her concerns. "Remember how your father tried to hide my surprise party and ended up acting like he was involved in a crime ring?" Despite her curiosity, Jasmine decided to trust Marcus. In their entire relationship, he had never given her any reason to doubt him. Whatever he was planning, she knew it came from a place of love. One evening, as they sat watching their favorite show, Marcus seemed particularly distracted. He kept checking his phone and smiling at messages. "Marcus," Jasmine said softly, "you know you can tell me anything, right?" He reached for her hand, his eyes twinkling with that familiar warmth she'd fallen in love with. "I know, baby. And soon, I'll tell you everything. Just wait until our anniversary dinner next week. I promise it'll be worth all the mystery." Jasmine squeezed his hand, choosing to embrace the excitement of the unknown rather than worry. After all, Marcus had always shown her that the best things in life often came as surprises, just like their first meeting in that grocery store. Little did she know that in just 7 days, at their dinner table, Marcus would reveal a surprise that would not only change their lives but impact their entire community in ways she could never have imagined. The evening of their first wedding anniversary arrived with perfect weather. Marcus had asked Jasmine to come home from work at exactly 6:00 p.m., not a minute earlier or later. When she pulled into their driveway, she noticed all the lights in their house were dimmed except for soft glowing candles visible through the windows. As Jasmine opened the front door, she gasped. Their entire living room was transformed. Rose petals made a path to their dining room, just like the day Marcus proposed. The smell of her favorite foods filled the air. Marcus had arranged for their favorite restaurant to cater their special dinner. "Marcus?" she called out softly. "In the dining room, love," his voice answered. When she walked in, Marcus was waiting in his wheelchair next to their beautifully set table. He wore a new navy blue suit that made him look incredibly handsome. 2 covered dishes sat on the table, along with a bottle of sparkling cider since Marcus couldn't drink alcohol with his medications. "Happy anniversary, beautiful," Marcus said, his eyes shining with love and excitement. He wheeled forward and handed her a small gift box. "Open this first." Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a mango charm. They both laughed at the reference to their first meeting. "Turn it over," Marcus instructed. On the back was engraved, "Every great love story starts with fruit." "It's perfect," Jasmine said, wiping happy tears from her eyes. "But you didn't have to go through all this secrecy just for our anniversary." Marcus grinned mysteriously. "Oh, the necklace isn't the surprise. Let's eat first, then I'll show you what I've been working on." Throughout dinner, Marcus could barely contain his excitement. His hands trembled slightly as he ate, and he kept checking his phone. Finally, after they finished their meal, he took a deep breath. "Jasmine, remember how you always said my accident led me to you for a reason? Well, I think I figured out an even bigger reason." He wheeled over to a drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. "Could you open that cabinet behind you? The one I've been telling you needs fixing." Confused, Jasmine stood and opened the cabinet door. Inside, instead of their usual dishes, she found stacks of papers, photographs, and what looked like architectural plans. "Take them out," Marcus encouraged, "and then I'll explain everything." With shaking hands, Jasmine began looking through the documents. Her eyes widened as she realized what she was seeing. There were legal papers for a non-profit organization, photographs of a large building being renovated, and detailed plans for what looked like a comprehensive rehabilitation center. "I don't understand," she whispered. Marcus wheeled closer, his eyes bright with tears. "For the past 6 months, I've been using my tech industry connections and savings to create something special. I call it the Wilson Taylor Accessibility Foundation." He pointed to various documents as he explained. "It's a nonprofit that will provide free or low-cost accessibility equipment to families who can't afford it. The building in those photos, it's going to be a community center with physical therapy services, support groups, and job training programs for people with disabilities." Jasmine's hands flew to her mouth as she realized the scope of what she was seeing. "This is what all the secret meetings were about." Marcus nodded. "Your boss helped me set up the physical therapy program. My lawyer friends handled the legal work. Even our families contributed. That's what all those packages at my parents' house were about. Equipment donations." "But how?" Jasmine asked, overwhelmed. "Remember that app I developed last year? A bigger company bought it. Instead of buying a bigger house or a fancier car, I wanted to use that money to help others. And I want you to be the director of physical therapy services." Tears streamed down Jasmine's face as she looked at the papers. There were already lists of families waiting for help, equipment ready to be distributed, and programs scheduled to begin. "The center opens next month," Marcus said softly. "I wanted everything to be perfect before I told you. You've shown me that disabilities don't define people. Now we can help others see that too." Jasmine fell to her knees beside Marcus's wheelchair, pulling him into a tight hug. What had started as a simple grocery store meeting had grown into something that would help hundreds of families. Through their love, they had found a way to create lasting change in their community. But this revelation was just the beginning of their journey together. 1 year after the dinner table revelation, the Wilson Taylor Accessibility Foundation had grown beyond anything Marcus and Jasmine had imagined. The community center, located in downtown Atlanta, had become a beacon of hope for families dealing with disabilities. On a bright Monday morning, Jasmine walked through the center's wide, welcoming halls. The walls were decorated with success stories, photographs of people whose lives had been changed by the foundation. She stopped to look at one particular picture, a young boy named Tommy, her first patient at the center, now standing proudly with his new walking aids. Marcus wheeled up beside her, having just finished a meeting with potential donors. Remembering Tommy's first day, he asked, taking her hand. He was so scared, Jasmine recalled. Now look at him, he's teaching other kids how to use their equipment. The center had helped over 500 families in its first year. Marcus's tech background meant they had excellent systems for matching donated equipment with those who needed it most. Jasmine's physical therapy expertise ensured that every person got the right support and training. But the foundation did more than just provide equipment. They had created a true community. Every Saturday, they hosted support group meetings where families could share their experiences and advice. The job training program had helped 30 people with disabilities find meaningful employment. One afternoon, while they were having lunch in the center's cafe, staffed entirely by program graduates, an elderly woman approached their table. She was crying happy tears. "I had to thank you both," she said, clutching a folded piece of paper. "My grandson just got accepted to college. We never thought it was possible before you gave him that specialized computer setup." Stories like these became common. The local news did a feature on the foundation, calling it a love story that built a community. The reporter interviewed Marcus and Jasmine about how their own journey had inspired the project. "When I met Jasmine, Marcus told the cameras, 'She didn't see my wheelchair, she saw me.' We want everyone who comes through these doors to feel that same acceptance." The foundation's success attracted attention from other cities. People started calling from Miami, Charlotte, and Birmingham, asking how they could start similar programs. Marcus and Jasmine began working on expansion plans, creating detailed guides to help other communities replicate their model. Their families were deeply involved too. Linda, Marcus's mother, ran the equipment donation program. Sarah, Jasmine's mom, organized fundraising events. Even Teresa, who had once doubted their relationship, volunteered every weekend. One evening, as they were leaving the center after a long day, they saw a young couple in the parking lot. The woman was in a wheelchair, and her partner was kneeling beside her, much like Jasmine had done with Marcus many times. "That was us a year ago," Jasmine said softly. Marcus smiled. "And now look at everything that grew from our love." Back at home that night, they sat at the same dinner table where Marcus had revealed his surprise a year earlier. But this time, Jasmine had news of her own. "Remember how we talked about starting a family?" she said, her eyes twinkling. "Well, I visited the doctor today." Marcus's eyes widened. "Are you saying?" Jasmine nodded, happy tears rolling down her cheeks. "We're going to have a baby." As Marcus pulled her into a tight hug, they both knew their story had come full circle. What started as a chance meeting in a grocery store had grown into a love that touched countless lives. Their child would grow up seeing that disabilities didn't limit people's ability to make a difference in the world. The foundation continued to grow, but Marcus and Jasmine never forgot their roots. They kept the mango charm necklace displayed in the center's lobby, along with their wedding photo and the story of how they met. It reminded everyone that love could build bridges, break down barriers, and create lasting change. Their legacy wasn't just in the buildings they built or the equipment they provided. It was in the hope they gave to others, showing that when love leads the way, anything is possible. And it all started because a shopping cart bumped into a wheelchair, proving that sometimes the biggest miracles in life come from the smallest accidents. The end.